Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. Now, ELP is going through something of a resurgence, mainly because Mobile Fidelity, MoFi, are reissuing what looks like most of the classic studio albums. And sadly, two of the three, E and L, are no longer with us. And when people think of ELP, they generally think of Keith Emerson, the great Keith Emerson, these wonderful piano and organ and synthesizer driven compositions that integrate original composition with classical composition. And in fact, Greg Lake, the voice and bass of ELP, was asked, well, what would you like your legacy to be? And he gave what I thought was a very interesting response. He said that if ELP introduced the great canon of European classical music to new young audiences, then they'll have done his job, in their job. And I think that was just a brilliant and humble but truthful answer. But there's another side to Greg Lake that was all over the radio because a 20-minute song with a 10-minute synthesizer solo isn't as necessarily as radio friendly as a 3-minute song. But Greg's songs, his ballads, were something that I think we need to revisit because he was a great balladeer. And across all of the albums, there was always a Greg Lake ballad. Lucky Man on the first, not so much, maybe Time and a Place, you could say, on Tarkus. There was the vocal section of Pictures at an Exhibition that Greg did. There was, of course, Still You Turn Me On from Brain Salad Surgery. Before that, there was From the Beginning, a big hit on Trilogy. There was C'est La Vie from Works. And this got me thinking that I think people out there in the ELP universe need to revisit the early 80s solo albums of Greg Lake that featured Gary Moore. It was a very interesting collaboration across a self-titled album and the second album, Maneuvers. And the two of them, I think, worked really well together. And most of the songs are sort of very much singer-songwriter ballads, but most of them, because of Gary Moore, are set to sort of up-tempo hard rock guitar. Greg also said something very interesting about Gary Moore is that he was much more comfortable playing traditional Irish music than he was playing the hard rock, which dominated Gary's career. Because Gary was someone who could play anything. He could play jazz fusion, like his Back on the Streets album, his work with Colosseum 2. He could play traditional blues, as he did in sort of the final 10 years, 15 years of his career. He could play hard rock, as he did in the 80s. He could play all sorts of complex prog rock the way he did on many of Cozy Powell's solo albums. And I just think that this combination of the balladeer and the versatile guitar player was so interesting. So I've been revisiting these albums, and they are a lot better than most people gave them credit for being at the time. And I just wish that Greg did more solo work in the 80s, but it wasn't to be. Maybe a Greg Lake compilation with his ballads from ELP and his solo work. Maybe there is one and just haven't checked, but that's something to think. Even though we don't really need compilation albums anymore, a victim of the playlist. I've done a video about that. You can feel free to check it out. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Greg Lake's ballads. Such a great singer-songwriter within the framework of this larger-than-life band. Like, subscribe, and as always, see you next time. Take care.